In a quiet village nestled between misty hills, time seemed to have forgotten a once thriving orchard at its edge. Overgrown with weeds and tangled vines, the orchard stood in silence. Trees bowed with age, their fruit long gone, their stories buried deep in the soil. Villagers avoided the place, calling it cursed or haunted, depending on who you asked. But one day, something changed. A scruffy, malnourished dog appeared at the orchard's edge. No one knew where he'd come from. He had no collar, no name, and eyes that seemed far too wise for a stray. The dog refused to be touched. Anyone who came close was met with a low growl or wary retreat. He didn't beg for food, yet when a kind soul left scraps near the orchard fence, he accepted them silently, but never crossed into the village. What caught everyone's attention, though, was a strange habit. Every single morning, he returned to the same dying apple tree and began to dig. Not randomly, always the same spot, always with focus, as if he were trying to reach something buried beneath. Rain or shine, the dog came back. People began whispering. What was he looking for? And what had been left beneath that ancient, forgotten tree? At first, the villagers dismissed the dog as just another stray, a lost soul drawn to the quiet of the abandoned orchard. No one paid much attention. Stray animals came and went in the hills all the time. But this one was different. Weeks passed, and he never left. Through thunderstorms, frost, and scorching sun, the dog remained, always returned to that same dying apple tree, always digging with a quiet desperation. His paws grew raw. His coat became matted with dirt. But he didn't stop. It was as though something beneath the earth was calling to him. The villagers began to talk. Some laughed, calling him mad. Just a dumb mutt chasing ghosts, one man scoffed. But others weren't so sure. Rumors started, old stories about the orchard being cursed, of missing people, buried secrets, and crimes never solved. Children dared each other to sneak to the fence to get a closer look. They'd tiptoe near and catch glimpses of the dog claw at the ground, his ribs showing through his dirty fur. If they got too close, he'd lift his head and bark sharply, not out of aggression, but warning. Stay back. Oddly, he never chased or attacked. He didn't wander. He didn't beg. He simply stayed, guarding his mysterious patch of earth beneath the apple tree, as if waiting for someone to finally understand what he was trying to say. Among all the villagers, it was 9-year-old Lila who felt the deepest pull toward the strange dog. She was quiet, observant, the kind of child who noticed things others missed. 2 years earlier, her older brother Jamie had vanished during a hiking trip in the same hills. His disappearance left a silence in her home no one could fill. When Lila first saw the dog by the orchard, digging alone beneath the crooked apple tree, something stirred in her. He reminded her of the puppy Jamie once brought home, all ribs and wide eyes, and how they nursed him back to health together. That bond had never left her heart. So, while others feared or mocked the dog, Lila watched. And then she began to act. Each morning before school, she sneaked scraps from the kitchen and crept toward the orchard. She left the food just inside the fence and sat quietly a few feet away, careful not to frighten him. At first, he ignored her, but slowly his body relaxed. He began to eat in her presence. Then one day, instead of turning away, he sat in front of her. Tentatively, Lila reached out. Her small hand trembled as it brushed his head, and to her amazement, he leaned into it. It was then, through the thick mat of dirt and fur, she noticed a worn leather collar. Carefully parting the mud, she read the faint letters engraved in the metal tag. Scout. He wasn't just a stray. He had a name. He had a story. And Lila was determined to uncover it. After Lila's gentle touch, something in Scout shifted, as if a long-locked memory had cracked open. The next day, and every day after, his digging intensified. No longer steady or methodical, it became wild and frantic. Dirt flew in every direction. He growled at the soil, his paws bleeding from constant clawing. But he didn't stop. Lila's joy at gaining his trust turned to worry. She sat beside him with teary eyes, trying to calm him, her small voice whispering, "It's okay, Scout. I'm here. You don't have to do it alone." But Scout was locked in something deeper than instinct. It was as though her touch had reminded him of a duty not yet fulfilled. Frightened, Lila turned to the only person she trusted, her grandfather, a retired police officer with sharp memory and a guarded heart. She led him to the orchard, explaining everything about the dog, the digging and the name on the collar. Her grandfather followed her in silence, eyes scanning the familiar terrain. But when they reached the apple tree and he saw Scout clawing desperately at the dirt, he froze. His expression changed. His weathered face paled as memories stirred. "This place," he whispered, stepping slowly toward the tree. This was the old Brennan farm. Lila looked up at him, confused. "The Brennans had a boy, around your age. He disappeared years ago. The whole family packed up and vanished after that. They said he wandered off and never came back." He stared down at the digging dog. "No one ever looked here." Lila's grandfather didn't waste time. The very next morning, he returned to the orchard with a couple of trusted villagers, shovels in hand. Lila stayed close by Scout's side, heart pounding. As they approached the apple tree, Scout began barking, loud, sharp, desperate barks that echoed to the orchard. Then he dropped to the ground and frantically pawed at a specific spot just beneath the roots. His growls were now mixed with whimpers, like he was begging them to understand. Without a word, the men started digging. The soil was dense, packed with years of rain and root, but they worked quickly. Minutes passed. Then suddenly, clunk, a shovel struck something. Everyone froze. Carefully, they cleared more dirt until a small, decaying wooden box was fully exposed, half rotted but still intact. It was no bigger than a suitcase. The air grew still. The lid creaked as they opened it. Inside was a folded piece of flannel cloth, faded and musty. Nestled within were a child's rusted toy truck, a cracked flashlight, and a weather-worn notebook with frayed edges. Beneath these, wrapped in torn fabric, were the unmistakable remains of small bones, fragile, heartbreaking, untouched by time but screaming of a life cut short. No one spoke. Lila clutched Scout tightly as the truth settled like thunder in their chests. The orchard had kept its secret for years, but Scout hadn't forgotten. The notebook, though soaked and brittle from years underground, still held pieces of the child's voice, echoes of fear, hope, and confusion. Some pages were lost to water stains, but others revealed crayon drawings, a stick-figure boy beside a smiling dog, trees, stars, and a small tent. Near the end, the writing grew shaky, the lines crooked, and then came the final entry, short, scrawled, and devastating. Asterisk, Scout's hurt. I can't get out. I think they forgot about us. Asterisk, tears welled in the eyes of those reading it. The words painted a haunting picture. A young boy trapped, injured, and alone except for his loyal companion. The mystery unraveled quickly after that. Authorities were called, and DNA testing confirmed what Lila's grandfather feared. The remains belonged to Matthew Brennan, the 10-year-old boy who vanished during a family camping trip over a decade ago. Somehow, he'd gotten separated and ended up in the orchard, hiding or trapped, unable to call for help. But what stunned everyone the most was Scout. He had stayed. Through the years, through the loss, through the passing seasons, the loyal dog never gave up. He had survived in the wild, guarding Matthew's final resting place, trying desperately to bring someone, anyone, back to the spot where all ended. His digging, his barking, his refusal to leave, it had all been a cry for help, a call to remember. Scout hadn't just been waiting, he had been mourning. When the authorities gently lifted the wooden box from the earth, Scout didn't bark. He didn't growl or whimper. He simply stood aside and watched, eyes hollow, his body still a stone. And when the box disappeared from view, he quietly walked back to the patch of disturbed soil and lay down. He didn't move for hours. The orchard grew silent again. No birdsong, no breeze, just the old dog curled tightly over the place where he had waited for so long. Lila sat beside him, her small hand resting on his back. She didn't speak loudly or cry. Instead, she whispered soft stories about her brother, about how brave Scout had been, and how Matthew would never be forgotten now. She talked as if speaking to both of them, her voice a gentle lullaby meant to soothe years of pain Scout had carried alone. As dusk settled over the orchard, Scout finally stirred. He stood slowly, his limbs stiff, and looked at Lila. Then, with a faint nudge of his nose against her hand, he began to walk. not away from the tree in sorrow, but beside her, step by step, as it passed in the weight of memory to someone who would carry it forward with love. Scout was no longer alone. Matthew was finally laid to rest with the dignity he deserved. His burial brought closure to a story that had haunted the village for over a decade. People from nearby towns came to pay their respects, leaving flowers and small toys beside his grave. In honor of his memory and the extraordinary loyalty of the dog who never left his side, the once-forgotten orchard was transformed. The weeds were cleared, the trees trimmed, and walking paths laid. It was renamed Matthew's Grove. Beneath the old apple tree, where everything had been found, a wooden bench was placed. It bore a simple, powerful plaque, asterisk for the boy who was never forgotten, and the dog who never stopped remembering. Asterisk, Scout now lives peacefully with Lila and her family, no longer wandering or searching. He sleeps in a warm bed, eats at set times, and greets Lila at the door each day. But every year on the anniversary of the discovery, he returns to the apple tree. He lies beneath it for hours, not to dig, but to rest. Eyes closed, tail still, as if visiting an old friend. He no longer guards a secret. He no longer waits. His duty is fulfilled. Scout is no longer astray. He is a hero, the silent guardian of love, loss, and the kind of loyalty that never dies.